Good morning. Welcome back to Expat Insights. I'm your host, Raju Mandhian. Our second guest today is a gentleman called Ernie Turner from US of A. And he's been coming to the Philippines since 1965 and runs a company called Leadership International Management, LLC. Am I right?
You're right.
LIM. LIM. And he has 2 books out in the market. This one came out about 8 years ago. Action, Reflection, Learning. Really good book. And he's just come up with gentle intervention for team coaching, and we are going to talk about that. So, Ernie, welcome to Expat Insights.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. You are such a big person to be on the seat.
I have more space here.
I know, I know. So, Ernie, I don't know, you are the master of learning and coaching and interviews and hosting and presentations. Start anywhere. I don't know. Lead me, take me anywhere, I'll follow.
Well, maybe I can talk a little bit about these 2 books, because Gentle Interventions really came out of the work that we're doing, which is primarily working with teams and building on what you and Greg had been talking about. How do you make win-win work?
You watched the show a while ago.
I watched that show.
Okay.
And to me, the essence of what we're doing is how can you make win-win work in the workplace? You asked him a question.
Yeah.
How do you make or help an individual, being a leader of a team or a team member, make a win-win work? And I think that's a wonderful question, and we've been looking at that in terms of learning. How do you make learning come to life?
Right.
And you mentioned I've been in the Philippines since 1965.
Yes, sir.
I was actually doing some work in Borneo, Malaysia.
Sumatra.
In Borneo, right south of the Philippines, and in the state of Sarawak, Malaysia. I was in a little town called Bintulu for 3 years with the U.S. Peace Corps. And on my vacations, I stopped in the Philippines, among other places. So I developed a fondness for the Philippines many years ago, and I've been coming back ever since. And now we have a LIM business here in the Philippines.
Yeah. How long has the business been around?
Since 1986. We've been in business for about 27 years now.
Philippines is beautiful now. I wonder how beautiful it was back in '65.
Well, I didn't get very much in the Philippines. I got to Manila and to Baguio, and
but still, the culture,
it was wonderful.
The ambience,
it's still nice. It's a wonderful country.
So you're saying that learning is the path, the key to developing win-win relationships or win-win outcomes? I
believe so. I think and that's one of the things that I discovered as a teacher.
Yeah.
I started my teaching career in the U.S., and then I was 3 years in Borneo, and then I was teaching in Angola, and Brazil, and Italy, and Kenya, and then back again to New York City. And throughout this journey of teaching, I really discovered the importance of learning.
Right, sir.
And that as teachers, as coaches, as facilitators, as trainers, if we can understand what is the learning proposition, what are the principles, and what are the practices, what are the concepts and tools, we can make learning come to life, which I think leads to a win-win possibility in the workplace, at home, wherever.
So there's a lot of people around the world, school systems, universities, and authors like yourself who are working at bringing learning to life.
Correct. Learning to life,
And I love it. I must tell you that I really enjoy that aspect of living, that there is learning in there, Yet, still there is struggle. Still there are challenges. That's why we have the word interventions, So where do you think, when and how do you think we'll cross the bridge? Or at least make an effort to cross the bridge?
Well, let me tell you a story that will illustrate, I think, how in a school, in a learning situation, and it can be applied to business as well, because I think when we're working with people and we're working with organizations, it doesn't matter whether you're a principal of a school or a president of a company. Learning is critical.
Okay.
A number of years ago, in 1975, I was working in New York City with the school system. And the school system was in pretty bad disarray at the time. There were a lot of dysfunctional schools. And I was working with an NGO called the New York Urban Coalition, and our mandate was to help the school system really work with the 50 most difficult schools to help turn them around. And I took on the most difficult school. The principal was a former Green Bay Packer. He was into win-lose.
What's a Green Bay Packer?
Green Bay Packer. Green Bay is a professional football team in the United States. And so he came into the school with a mandate of how can I turn this school around? It was in bad shape.
Yeah.
And just to give you a little bit of a feel for it, there were more windows broken than not. All the doorknobs had been kicked off.
Yeah.
The fourth floor had been burned out by the kids, so they were only using 3 floors of a 4-story building. The chains around the doors were locked to keep
like
the
in the
intruder.
movies.
It was like one of those movies.
Stand up and deliver. Or
That's right. It was very much like that.
To serve with love. Yeah.
And he had a passion to turn the school around.
Mm-hmm.
And I put the fist up because that was his way of going about it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it happen.
Right.
And
so he came up with, I'm going to fix this. Bang, yeah?
So it was an I. And in terms of going from win-lose to win-win, he had to turn it into we. Going from I to we. And the magic word there was help.
Wow.
And I think that's probably one of the words we don't use enough is asking for help. Saying, I can't do it, I need you. So it's going from a fist to an open hand. And when he got to that point where he said, I've tried my best, it's not working, help.
Yeah.
And he asked the parents, the teachers, the students, the support staff, and the community.
Yeah.
And we got them together. Mm-hmm. And with his request of help, then some of the gentle interventions were around, how do we help? Get into planning. How do we share leadership? How do we go from a dream to actual delivery of actions? Wow. So those are some of the gentle interventions around getting from a win-lose to a win-win.
Great. So in a family or in a small business or a small setup, when whoever is positioned in the leadership role, and if he takes upon himself to act that way and not call in for help, say, well, look, I can't do it, let's do it together, or, well, I can't do it, I need help, basically. I mean, or not, I can't do it, I need help is enough, because I can't do it
alone.
Yeah, I can't do it alone. So that creates a lot of turnaround.
I've never seen a situation where somebody has reached out their hand and said help, where somebody hasn't grabbed it and said, we will.
Wow, you know, that's a lesson for me, actually.
I mean, it's such a simple word, a 4-letter word. Yeah. There's a lot of 4-letter words around, but this is one that is seldom used, that if used more, I think it would turn around almost any organization. I've seen it happen. I was working in Hong Kong with a woman, a managing director of a pharma company there, who was also very competent, is competent, very bright, probably the brightest in the building.
Yeah.
And she knew what she had to do and wanted to do, and she had to get through the help circle too. And now she's gone from a pyramid type of I'm at the top to much more of hands being held into a shared leadership model where if you would walk into her leadership team, you would have no idea who the leader was.
Who the boss is.
Because everybody now feels this is my team. This is our team. It's not her team, it's ours. And that's cascaded through the whole organization, team by team.
You know, I've never given this a lot of thought to seeking help and then evening out the landscape, because it does. You know, it's a very powerful key. You know? Now, my question would be, the question, of course, not for myself, and you cited examples, is how do I apply it to businesses that are focused on success, businesses that are focused on bottom line, no? And when and how do they call upon someone like you or somebody else who can have them come together, merge, or become a team and help each other?
Well, the work that we do is very much a 5-dimensional approach to success, to win-win. It's looking at business development, looking at organization development, looking at professional development, team development, and personal development. So it's a systemic, holistic, integral
professional
approach.
And personal is, there's a difference between professional and personal?
Yes, personal is who am I as a human being?
Okay.
Who are you,
Raj?
Raj? What are our stories? How did we get here? What makes us tick? So we get an appreciation of the strengths, of the interests, of the passions of the people we work with. So often in business we forget that. We said that we're here to focus on the business only. And we've discovered that if you spend a little time helping the people understand and appreciate who their colleagues are, because we're at work 5 days of the week and often longer than we're with our family.
Yeah.
So if you can start to appreciate who your colleagues are, instead of thinking, thank God it's Friday, you can start thinking, thank God it's Monday. I get to see Raj again.
So, Ernie, this is a way to win-win on a larger scale. No? On a
Right.
larger scale. What percentage of companies across the world today have bought into this? And what is the story today? I mean, how much are buying in, and what is the best way to have them buy into it?
Well, I think I can't answer the question in terms of how many today. There's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of organizations like
Gut feel, yeah?
A gut feel. I would say maybe 15%.
Right. So.
Are a lot are aspiring to this. I think more and more is being written. I think Covey, in his work, has certainly been influential in helping people understand that you can take business and make it really work.
Holistic.
And take a systemic approach, a holistic approach.
Yeah.
One of the ways that we are able to work with companies is because we don't lose sight of the bottom line.
Right.
Our motto is earning while learning. So that we believe that if a team is actually working around those 5 dimensions, who are we? How do we get to know each other personally? Professionally, what do you do? What do I do? So be clear on our roles, our functions, our priorities, our responsibilities, helping one another rather than competing. Because often in teams, marketing and sales are standing side by side, but sometimes there's overlap. So understanding how can we support one another.
You want to share quickly a success story? If you have a success story from the Philippines, a company or something, which you helped or which are now seeking help from each other, and there are no big silos between the departments, even though they have clarity, but there are no power silos, yeah?
Well, one of the chapters in the book is about a team that I've worked with recently here in the Philippines. We were up at Tagaytay, and this is the leadership team of a pharma company, and they were doing really well, but they wanted to do even better.
Okay.
And when we talk about high performance, we always talk about higher performance. A lot of our clients are teams that are doing well, that believe and want to do better. So we were able, over a period of 2.5 days, and we work with a team usually 3 or 4 times, 2.5 days each, over a period of a month or a year to a year and a half. And so in the first session of 2.5 days, we really looked at each of those dimensions and help them better understand the difference between the roles and how they can really collaborate. One of the things we did, very simple, it's called walk and talk. It's one of these gentle interventions.
Yeah.
And what we did, we took a 2-hour walk around Tagaytay, Atoll, looking down over the volcano.
Yeah.
And in the 2 hours, everybody walked with everybody else. They had 10 minutes to walk with everybody else.
Yeah.
One of the things we discovered afterwards when we debriefed, what was this like? Many said, I have never spent 10 minutes with so-and-so on this team.
Okay.
Now I have a better understanding of who she is and vice versa. So a lot of the silos were starting to break down. And that was one of the goals. How do we break the silos? Because often in a team, people are working like this as opposed to like this.
Yeah.
And one of the things that has happened since that is that the teams are getting together every Monday morning in the managing director's office for a huddle.
Walk and talk.
It's a basically walk and talk without the walk.
Yeah.
It's just coming together and having an open conversation, having a dialogue.
Scrum.
And having that dialogue where you really are listening. And I think that's the other key word in terms of asking for help, really listening to each other.
Hey, Ernie, I'm going to play a devil's advocate here.
Okay.
A little bit of that, because this is sometimes when we put people into situations to learn, guided learning, coaching, whatever you want to call it, no? So when people realize that, hey, this is a process, I want to play the part, and let me give a successful report. So what they're doing is outsmarting the system constantly. I hope I'm clear about what I'm saying, no?
Right.
How would you, as a learning specialist or even a consultant of interventions, beat that? Is there any way to overcome that? You know what I'm saying? Am I clear on what I'm saying?
Let me paraphrase to see if I
please,
get it. Okay,
yes,
very often
Yeah.
in businesses we want to look good. And so we're sitting around in a leadership team talking about our success and giving a sort of a report.
Right.
Here's what I've done in China, and this is what you've done in India, etc. And we're all waiting our turn to do our little PowerPoint presentation on what's working well.
With or without the PowerPoint, you know,
or without.
Metaphorically speaking,
What we are encouraging teams to do is ask for help. And we have a process to help that happen. It's called peer coaching. So what happens in this scenario, instead of coming in and reporting on what's going well, however we do it, we say, you know, I've got a real challenge in my part of the business, and I need your help. Here's my challenge, and frame it as a question. Then everybody on the team is given 5 minutes of silence to pretend that they are that individual and say, if I were in your shoes, here's some questions I would be asking.
So they don't go back and plunge back into a problem-solving mode because...
Well, it's two steps. The first step is say, what are the questions? And we say open-ended questions, not recommendations pretending to do questions, which is often what we do as leaders. We ask a question. Have you talked to Raj about this? So it's a you question, put you on the spot. It's a yes or no question, which is very limited. So we ask open-ended questions, I questions, so it's easier for the individual to hear. We write them down. We take 5 minutes of silence and let everybody write down as many questions. We give those questions to the individual. Second round is ideas, offers to support, because you've asked for help. So what we can do now is also take 3 or 4 minutes and write down, here's how I can help you with an idea, with a recommendation, a book, an article, just helping you organize if you want.
This process, in comparison to focusing on strength or strength seeking or focusing on the positive, how does that compare? How does it compare to that? Are there any pitfalls to this system compared to the fact that when you focus on success and strengths, there are less of pitfalls? At least people claim there are less pitfalls, no?
I think it's both. We take a very appreciative approach to development.
Even to raising issues or need for help situations.
We also take time, encourage teams to take time to share what have you discovered, what have you learned, and how did that happen? So people are able to talk about how they did what they did. And I think that's a key part of the process, too, is to understand how. The word gentle interventions came from a book called The Tao of Leadership.
The Tao.
Tao of Leadership. And one of the chapters in that book was gentle interventions. And that whole book is about the process of how do you get things done.
Who was the author of that Tao?
John Heider is looking at Lao Tse's work in terms of leadership. But it's very applicable to a teacher, to a coach. It has multiple applications.
Great, amazing. I like what I hear and feel. Don't see yet because no glasses, no? Now, the question on my mind is, where do we go from here? Where do you think the world is going in terms of building organizations, in terms of becoming conscious of how we are more of learning systems rather than people who run after profits or performance?
Great question. One of the things Greg mentioned that I am a strong believer in, if we were to take the money in the world and distribute it, everyone would be a millionaire. And so the challenge I think that we have globally is how can we help both ends of the spectrum reach out and offer support as well as request support. And I think if we can, each of us, look at what can I do to leave a legacy for in the communities that I can serve to make a difference. You know, Greg mentioned his organization, Chalice, is doing this with kids. I'm spending some time right now back in Borneo with an indigenous group of leaders in an NGO called Save Sarawak Rivers. And that's one of the chapters in the book in terms of how do people come together, organize, work together for a cause that they believe in. 12 of the rivers in Sarawak are going to be dammed, which will displace many people. It'll destroy forests, animals, and birds, and for the greed of a few to really take over the control of rivers.
We will come to a stage as a civilization that we will trust in abundance, we will trust in helping and seeking help. You see that picture?
We have to. If we don't, we won't be around, or our kids won't be around to really enjoy the planet. It's happening right now.
Yeah.
There was a study done just a few weeks ago in the Arctic Circle around what's happening with the permafrost, and that there are now 100 channels or columns of fumes from the permafrost, methane, 10 times, 20 times stronger than CO2, and that's coming into the atmosphere. Each of these columns is a kilometer wide.
Right.
You can imagine 100 columns of methane gas coming out, what that's going to do to our environment. It's catastrophic.
Yeah.
If we as a group of global citizens don't recognize what's happening in the Arctic Circle above Canada, part of Canada, is having a big impact here in the Philippines.
All the dollar chasing and the buck chasing we are doing will come to nowhere.
It'll come to nowhere. We're gonna be flooded out. Manila will be underwater. Where I am, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, underwater. Where I'm sitting in my home, it'll be underwater in a few years if we don't do something. So I think this whole idea of learning, how can we make learning come to life? How can we make people aware, particularly decision makers? What can we do to really lobby in a fundamental way so that the Obamas of the world and the other leaders are taking decisions that need to be taken on behalf of the entire world community?
I'm sure there's a certain part of their mind that knows the right answer.
They do, inside. And that's another part of the learning equation, the tacit knowledge. We don't have to go very far to get the answers. We have to have the answers in here.
Ernie, thank you very much for being on Expat Insights, and thank you for these insights which are, wow, big and detailed at the same time. No? Last question, we have 2 minutes ago. Of course, you want to tell me what you're doing in the Philippines and what your dreams are, that's fine. But what brought you to this stage in life? And was there any incident in your life that made you such a thinker that you are today?
I think probably one of the fundamental turning points for me was my 3 years in the jungles in Borneo, teaching.
This is in the 60s?
This is in 65 to 68.
Yeah. But was that a 3-month process, or was that one aha moment for you? Saying,
I think it was a cumulative process where I was really looking. I was teaching the British syllabus, which for a lot of those kids was not relevant.
Yeah.
Relevance is another critical learning principle. So what can I do to make learning relevant to the kids that I'm with? Or
so you did force yourself to reflect upon it.
It forced me to really look at who am I as an American, because you don't know who you are until you leave your country. Like a fish doesn't know it's a fish until it gets out of water.
So little last question, and we need to wrap up on that. So when you mention action, reflection, and learning, so when we talk about reflection, there has to be a cognitive effort towards reflection. Like just now, we came to the statement that we have to force to reflect. So it has to be from the forefront of our mind. Is that something, am I right on that track?
Right. Well, I think, how do you make reflection practical? There's a lot of ways to do it.
Yeah.
One is to just take time to be quiet.
So
and do it even in a meeting. Yeah. Do it in a meeting, in a coaching conversation, a couple minutes of silence.
So it's a consciously driven act, because he was talking about conscious, unconscious. Okay, so it has to be driven from somewhere here then.
But you can even support your subconscious by saying before you go to bed at night, subconscious, I want you to work on this question. You wake up in the morning, and more often than not, you're going to get an answer.
But yet you press the green button consciously.
Consciously, yes.
Ernie, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And
Raju, thank you.
Well, God bless you on your journey, and good luck with the world.
Thank you.
So that was Ernie Turner from US of A. He lives in Fort Lauderdale, but the company is in New York, and he comes and goes from often to the Philippines. So if you want to catch him, it's www.lim, LLC.
LIM, www.limglobal.net.
Limglobal.net. Okay, thank you very much. So thank you for watching Expat Insights. I'm your host, Raju Mandhya. Next week on Expat Insights, we have Paul Z. Jackson, the founder of Applied Improvisation Network. So he's here to talk about how to be funny at work. Good night and have a great weekend.